Welcome to Some Things Considered, the podcast where we are obsessed with story. We celebrate creativity and we talk to cool people to find out what makes them tick. I'm your host, Sean Murphy. I'm an author. I direct the Center for Story at Shenandoah University, and I run the nonprofit 1455 Lit Arts. For more about me and what I do, check out seanmurphy.net. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Some Things Considered. This is the podcast where we celebrate creativity. We're obsessed with story, and I find cool people to talk to and find out what makes them tick. I'm Sean Murphy, your host. You can find out more about me and the stuff I do at seanmurphy.net. But the focus of this podcast is getting out of the way and learning from experts and masters and having some fun conversation. If you know anything about me and have been following my programming, you know who I'm talking to today. She's a dear friend. She's a hero of mine. And we've had the opportunity to talk many times. So when this goes live in January, which by the way will be on book release day, which we'll talk about, I'll embed links to previous conversations so you can get a little more. But who am I talking to? Jenna Blum, of course. Let me read you a truncated version of a truly voluminous and awe-inspiring bio, but this covers some of the key highlights. Jenna is the New York Times and number one internationally best-selling author of novels, Those Who Save Us, The Stormchasers, The Lost Family, the unbelievably beautiful memoir Woodrow on the Bench, which she and I discussed in great detail a few years back. Her fifth book, Murder Your Darlings, officially comes into the world in January 2026. I have been lucky enough to already read it because that's how we do things. So I am here to talk to her about this book and what's going on in her world. Jenna, it's always my giddiness is obvious. It's wonderful to see you, and thanks for being here.
It's just a pure joy to see you, my friend. Sean is my brother from another mother, as you guys know, if you have seen any of my socials or have seen us before. Like, we just love each other so much. So, you are stumbling into a big love fest today. The end.
Yeah, no apologies, right? Let's just say right up front, we're going to be those people, and you're either on board with us or you can understandably, well, it's not understandable. You hang in there with us. The love is earned, and you'll see why. But look, I've got a million things I want to talk to you about, but let's get right down to business. New book. The book's amazing. No suspense. Two knives up. It's getting unsurprising pre-pub raves. It's going to do great. It's also your first psychological thriller. So before we get into all my questions and what you're up to and what you're planning, new ground covered. How did one come to write a book in this tricky but very provocative genre?
Well, thanks, Sean. I guess, I mean, what I'll do is I'll first give my elevator pitch for Murder Your Darling so people know, what the book is basically about. It is a contemporary psychological thriller, as you said, and it's about a mid-career female author whose name is Sam Simone Vetiver, and she is on tour with her fourth book, wrapping it up. She's under contract for a fifth book, which she despises and dreads writing. And with every book she's written after an initial bestseller, her sales have gone down and down and down. And she's worried that she's emotionally detaching from the books. And she also is a year out from a divorce after a fairly traumatic marriage to a man she loved and didn't work out. So she's at a bit of a crossroads in her life when we meet her. And into her life parachutes this stratospherically successful, extremely charming, very important author named William Corwin, who's successful for writing and renowned for writing female-centric novels that he changes genres with every time. And Sam and William begin a courtship. And as they get into their relationship, bodies start to pile up around them. And Sam, who can't trust her own instincts because she has a trauma background, is forced to question, is William too good to be true? Is it one of his numerous female stalkers who may be causing this murderous problem? Is it an especially persistent stalker named the Rabbit, who we hear from quite a bit? And she is a bookseller, but she also is an extremely dedicated stalker who's stalking both Sam and William throughout the novel. So that's in a nutshell what Murder Your Darlings is about.
and nutshell indeed, because you covered a lot, but there's a lot going on here. So for people that watch this podcast and understand that, where my tastes run, I personally am less comfortable talking about different genres, so I know where not to go, but I've read enough. This is to me, and you'll forgive the somewhat naive and basic. It satisfies like lit fic because you're just too good of a writer. It's plot heavy. There's tons of character development. There's a lot going on. And I have to say, I mean, the best compliment I can pay is I literally, it's every cliche. Literally couldn't stop reading it, but there was a lot of nourishment and a lot of insight, which again, you can't help but bring to bear. But like we're getting at things like obsession, literary envy, status, navigating the contemporary lit industry, which of course is steady and changing. It's that weird vertigo of every day is totally different. Um, I know that you're bringing some of this knowledge to bear, but I would love you to tell the watchers your take on how, knowledge and experience meets with the sense of adventure and how your passions combine with this. Like, but I got to set the bar and do something I haven't done before and go all in.
Oh gosh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny, when I first started working on Darlings, I didn't feel like I was allowed to write a thriller. And when I say thriller too, I should tell everybody who's watching, and thank you for watching, thank you for joining us, that I don't read mysteries. Like I can't read Agatha Christie. I mean, I do every once in a while if a friend or a client is writing a mystery, but I can't keep the facts straight. I don't do police procedurals. And, about two-thirds of the way through the book, I'm like, yeah, if you say so, I guess that happened. And I'm just kind of reading along because I might like the characters or the writing. So that is not what I wrote. Like what I wrote is more like The Shining. Like things are happening and they are like crazy things that are happening and really dark things. But the book is really psychological portraiture. So I think of it more as like a why done it than a who done it in some ways. Like hopefully you don't know exactly, there are a lot of twists in this book that I plotted out very carefully, and hopefully you don't know what they are till the end. But it is mostly about the people and the psychology. And that's something that I've always done, Sean. Like I am very invested, and I've always wondered since I was a child, like why do people do the things they do and the darker things that people do? And I feel like people who do read true crime or read thrillers or want to investigate that darker side of the human psyche also want to know that it's our way of keeping ourselves safe and our way of kind of sticking a toe into that dark territory that we all know is there without like having it chopped off. Like it's always safe within a book, as Hank Philippi Ryan says. So I guess, to return to the questions you actually asked, why did I do this? I was working on historical fiction, which I'm more known for, and my editor had greenlighted this idea. It was a fantastic idea, um, in my mind and in
Right?
concept, not on paper. You know how they say something's good on paper? The idea was not good on paper. It was very wooden and very forced. And I had the Darlings characters in my head the whole time. So I felt like I had two projects trying to elbow their way through a doorway at the same time. But I still, even though I love books about writers, and Darlings is all about writers, every character is a writer, they're all behaving badly. Writers do that. We do. We're all assholes. Like we all behave badly. Covetous, ego driven. Well, I mean, there are good things about us too, but I mean, many of us are just awful behaved. So, I was thinking about these characters, and even though I have grown up reading books about writers from Harriet the Spy onward, to Stephen King, to Meg Wolitzer, Jean Ham Corlitz wrote the plot, I didn't feel like I could write about writers, a contemporary novel, because I was like, oh, it's cheating. Like I'm cannibalizing my own life, and it's not enough effort, and it's not enough pain, it's not enough of a heavy lift. And then I did read The Plot by Jean Hanf Korelitz, which is about the literary world as well. It's a thriller.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I literally stalked her. I got her phone number from a mutual friend. I called her and said, "Did you get pushback when you switched from writing, literary fiction to writing a thriller?" And she said, "I just write what I write. The publisher markets it. You should write what you want to write." And so I sat down and started writing Darlings. And I have to tell you, It is the most fun I have ever had writing a book ever. Like every time I put my hands on the keyboard, every day I was like snort laughing my way through the whole book. I think it is hilarious. I'm glad that some of the early reviews are like, this book is so funny because I think it is so funny. And it's not just me playing,
Yeah.
alone in my room. But unlike Hemingway, who opened the vein and bled, what I did with this book is I unpacked my life because I've been a career writer since I was 4, and I can share now with readers all the weird and wonderful and darkly hilarious things about being a writer, just verbatim. That's it.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that because, I know you. Of course, no one knows anyone, and I think it gets into really tricky terrain to make assumptions irresponsibly about what's true, what isn't true. Because I think any writer, whether they're writing nonfiction or fiction, there's page truth, real truth, and the reality, right? As anyone that knows how to write dialogue, how we actually live is actually boring. So to me, one of the things that I really was reminded reading this book is, first of all, it's very clear that this was honest and you were enjoying it, which I don't presume that I can know that, but you know when you're reading a book that the author enjoyed. There's exceptions to that rule, I'm sure. Just like there's music that the person was miserable, but like the ebullience kind of shines through and your mischievous like fun with some of this. But I knowing you, I do think it's like it's doing a service to be vulnerable, to be honest, and explore that territory, and in the service of something that is deeply personal, right? Like you just said, but is these different characters. Like, I mean, that's the art of fiction, right? To mine what matters to somebody, matters to oneself. Um, and then imagine it because not only does it give you safe space, most writers don't care about that, but it actually makes it more believable. If you know what I mean, like I think if you had done this, I think you do have another memoir and you talking about the writing life because who better than you? But to do it this way makes it so much more accessible. So I think this is a valuable service for readers, but even aspiring writers to get a sense of like this is the deal. This is what it's like to be a writer. That's a valuable addition to the canon.
Thank you. I really hope so. Thank you for saying that. I hope it is like that knowledge is wrapped in some sort of sugar. Like I feel like this is such a sugary book in some ways. Like I had this great, I had really lovely quoters, but and I'll read this so that it's not actually me, but Joe Finder, who is an amazing thriller author who wrote The Oligarch's Daughter last, but he has many, many thrillers. And he said, "Is it wrong to call a serial killer novel fun? Because Murder Your Darlings is great fun. It's a delicious satire of the writing life as well as a genuinely gripping thriller." And I never read my own blurbs, but I'm doing that because I feel like
Yeah.
what I hope the book is. Like I was sitting this summer when I was working on this a little bit with Mark Cecil, who's a dear friend of mine who wrote a book called Bunyan and Henry. He does thoughtful bro interviews on A Mighty Blaze. And
Yeah.
Caroline Kepnes, who is the author of the You books, which became the You series on Netflix. And we were all hanging out at the Cape, feeding seagulls and pretending we were in some sort of like noir film and having beer and whatever. And we were talking about how the aspiration with these books, Caroline's book and my book, was that we wanted it to be like an ice cream sandwich. Like we wanted it to be like an ice cream sandwich on a hot day that you have to eat really quickly before it melts, but it's like delicious. Like the experience is delicious and kind of messy and melty. And
Yeah.
I hope that's what I've provided because the truth about the writing life in here is that writing life and writing is often hard. And I know it's not ditch digging. And I know it's not working 3 jobs and driving an Uber just to pay the rent and doing all the things that that single moms do and that people of color are like, being targeted for. It's
Sure.
like there's so many things that are harder than writing. And if this is your living, there are things about it that are specifically hard. And I didn't shy away from pulling any punches, but I also feel as though I hope that the book is both an ice cream sandwich and like a love letter to this life too. Like, why do we do this? Like creating something from your head that then becomes an object is an act of practical magic.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll add, I think many writers, or at least many writers I know, take umbrage, understandably, with the romanticized notion of the writer in their study with the scotch and the pipe, and it's the muse is flowing, and it's like, we are the first people to say that we believe in magic and we pray for those moments of inspiration that kind of come out of nowhere. But the reality is, like any job, it's work. And again, I think a certain one of the many pathways, kind of philosophically, that this book opens is even what's not on the page. It makes it clear that the day in and day out of any writer's life, for lack of a better word, is can be drudgery. The same way digging a ditch or practicing the violin. Like it isn't this moment where you're on stage all the time in a tuxedo playing, with the symphony. It's you've got to put in the practice, you've got to put in the time. And again, I think you do a masterfully subtle job of reinforcing the fact that this is work. So if you are someone that appreciates writing or wants to be a writer, this is not a fairy tale. This requires work, and I get it kind of reclaims space again in a very subtle way, but it puts an emphasis on the fact that this is a craft and it takes time to do it. And what that leads to, of course, in the ice cream sandwich sense and the deliciousness is that also comes with paralyzing self-doubt, envy, solipsism, the pressures that we put on ourselves, the pressures the industry puts on us. And I think I defer to you in so many matters, but the fact that you have long been recognized as a New York Times, like you're a best-selling author, so you really know where the bodies are buried. I'm curious how much you in the past have held back on being a little more open and vulnerable about maybe the less savory sides of once the book is written, right? I think we all know now in 2025, like I think it was still a romanticized notion, right? But back in the day, it was like you write your book and you move on to the next book and everything else goes on behind the scenes. We as authors don't have that luxury, so we're deeply involved in the pre-publication, the editing, the marketing, etc. But you really have seen that landscape and how it shifted in the last quarter century.
Yeah, very much. And I'm always honest with you. I'm not always
Like
like,
I'm sure you're like, is there a question there? But
I mean, I think there's a commentary and a question because you're a practicing writer yourself. You're a practicing author as well as all the other hats that you wear. And we both have seen a lot of shifts. And that is what Darlings is, largely about. Like all of the writers in the book are kind of coming to terms with the fact that it's not just the writing that is hard and that also offers these moments of grace. It's also that the commerce of art and business has always been a really tricky intersection. It's like the Drake passage, like you go into the Drake Shake, like the two oceans are coming together there, and there is a lot of tumult there. There are a lot of vicissitudes, and that's always been the case. I think it's especially the case now. I'm delighted that instead of having the big five publishing houses, we now have the big six with source books. Like the more opportunities we have, like 1455 books, for instance, for people to get their work out there, the better off we are. But it is a scramble, and there's no hiding. That's something I wrote a lot about in this book about why would people go to murderous lengths to succeed as writers? Because sometimes it feels like you have to. It's a very competitive game. Like there are a couple of chapters in the book that are maybe were some of my favorite, definitely were my favorite chapters to write, that describe Sam's graduate school experience and how all of the writers in graduate school were like creatures trying to get out of the primordial ooze. But in order to get out of that swamp, you have to kick another writer in the face and step on that person's head and claw your way out. I mean, that's what it feels like a lot of the time. It's not like that, but it can feel like that. And so the desperation to have a good idea, to put it into the world, to then have it be successfully published, to have it marketed, to reach a level of success where you feel safe, like not even to take over the world like William Corwin is in this book, where he's anything that he's like one of those rare writers who can sneeze into a napkin and they'll publish it and it will be a bestseller. There are like three people like that in real life. He is one of those people in this book.
Yeah.
Unlike William, the rest of us are like, we just want to feel safe. We just want to continue doing this thing we love to do. And the pressures, the tectonic pressure to get to that space can make people do really bad things. And that's kind of what I was working with here.
Totally. And I think one of the many reasons that you and I bonded, many moons ago is I think it's a cop out and another cliche, like it's competition. So writers, of course, are shitty. Like to me, it's both unimaginative and it exonerates shitty behavior on a human level, much less an artistic level. You have always been one that lifts up other writers, myself very much included. You look to give, and I would venture to say, from my own experience, that's both a combination of once you know the truth, once you know you can do better, you kind of have to do better. But also there's an element of selfishness in that sharing joy, making space for others. It's not a zero-sum game, and it's a way to stay sane. It's a way to stay positive in an industry and a world where we are beset by competition and the zero-sum game, mythology that the winner takes all the spoils. It's like that creates miserable writers and it creates miserable people. I know you've got thoughts about that, and how you channel that into kind of this wisdom that fills the novel.
That is so kind of you to say. I think, there is only one pie. Like when you're a publisher, they're going to allocate money to one book or another book based on how well they think that book is going to do in any
Yep.
given quarter. And that's just the reality of the game. But I also think that, we sometimes denigrate the writers who can write anything, sneeze into the napkin and bring in $1 million. Like, yeah, 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 you put out a book a year now, and like you're not really
Yeah.
doing the artistic thing anymore, blah, blah, blah. Those writers' salaries are and what the readers pay for their books is supporting the rest of us who are scrambling to get a piece of the pie. So there
Right.
is that knowledge out there. Realistically, it's true. Like the pies are pies. They're not infinite. At the same time,
Right.
I think there are only so many things we can control as humans and as writers. And so what I try to do is to make the best product I possibly can. In the end, like a book is a product. Like I am going to bring it to my readers and say, I made you this thing. I hope you love this thing. It came from
Yep.
my head. It came from my heart. It came from the ether. It might be like an act of grace. God bless, but I hope you love it and I hope you want to buy it. And please buy many copies and give them to everybody you know. Like that's the thing, right? But you also,
Yeah.
go out and promote it. You market it if you are so inclined as a writer. Many writers are not. If you are, it helps. And
Yep.
beyond that, you just kind of have to let it go and keep writing more books. And that's a really
Yep.
hard thing. Like these products are our children, our literary children. And so again, that intersection between art
Yeah.
and commerce is uneasy. And that is what we live with every day.
Yep. So here's another thing I'm curious about. Again, I think I know the answer, but for those that don't know you, you are a very refreshing and I don't even know if I'd say rare, but you are the exception to the rule that writers are by nature introverts, shy away from conversation, as everyone can see in real time right now, you do have this vivacity and this extroverted enthusiasm about you. You are a writer and you've written about this. I think it actually is in the book too. You actually, I know it's in the book. But I know that you've talked about this and we've talked about this. You love doing the readings, the signings, the meetings. I think there's a human part of that that's Jenna, but there's also, I imagine, something that you've cultivated by appreciating how hard this is and how rare it is to have a book one feels great about and has that window of time to promote it and talk about it. Talk a little bit about your excitement and enthusiasm about what's coming up and maybe walk us through what is a big writer deal with once the book comes out and hits the road.
Just, if you'll forgive me, I might actually read about that because there
I
is like
love it.
a passage that is exactly about that. I mean,
Yeah.
Sam in the book, the heroine, is 100% meta. So what happens to Sam in the book did not happen to me. However, everything that she goes through with her writing life and everything she thinks about the writing life is absolutely me to the degree that I was doing an interview a couple of weeks ago and I was in my living room instead of in my study where I am now. And
Yeah.
I kind of moved my camera, and the interviewer said, "Oh, that's Sam Vetiver's fireplace." And I was like, "Right, I forgot I put that in the book. Like Sam's apartment in the book is my apartment. Like it's totally, totally meta. So everything that you read about the writing life in here is completely me, 100%.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Actually, yes. And my agent and my editor are both in the book verbatim. I did not change
Amazing.
them at all. I changed the names. That's it. The real people argue about who is more important, the agent or the editor. Like it's just a joy. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that part. And then there are two other narrators who are not me in any way. And that was also like a fascinating thing. But here's how I think about Tor. Where is it? Okay. Most authors said they hated Tor. Sam was not among them. She often thought she wrote books to go on tour. She loved everything about it, the airport breakfasts consisting of hummus, the room service cheeseburgers she wolfed down after events. She loved the thing every other human was phobic about, public speaking. She loved being hustled through country club and community center kitchens like some sort of superstar. When else did writers get to do this? She even loved flying, marveling that she was traveling because people cared what she had to say about, amazingly, her own books. Most of all, Sam loved the readers, the readers, the readers, the readers. And it goes on from there. But like, and it's so funny, like this book kind of is like my encyclopedia now for any question anybody has about writing ever. I'm like, just read that. Like there's when you were talking about how hard the writing process is, one of my favorite chapters is Sam in her yoga pants in her study trying to write her fifth book, and she's writing absolute shit that I thought was so funny when I was writing because it's so bad. It's just so awful. And every time she puts her hands on the keyboard, it gets worse and worse. So anyway, um, yes, that is how I feel about Tor. I love Tor. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first off, that was a genuine laugh out loud moment when she's writing the draft and then starts writing to herself like, "What the fuck are you doing, you idiot?" Like it's so relatable, but it's also again, it's so humanizing. It's so you. And yeah, and you said it earlier. The reviewers are saying it. Let me add, in case I didn't say it earlier, there are moments of extreme suspense and insight, but it is a laugh out loud funny in all the right ways. And some of these trials and tribulations in her head are again so relatable to anyone I think that's trying to do difficult work and do it well in a way that's spiritually kind of rewarding. But I also want to shine a little light on the fact. So again, I think it's clear we can see where Jenna begins in the author and like you're you, it comes through in your writing, it comes through in what you do, but you also have evolved and adapted. I'd love you to talk a little bit about what I talk about you all the time as it relates to when people talk about social media. I'm like, let me take you back to pre-social media and the things people needed to do or would do to make themselves either uncomfortable or to ensure that they had a better chance. Your book tour, for those who save us, and your efforts to meet your audience more than halfway, is like a case study of how a writer need not and should not sit back and go, I did it. I put myself into this and now the world will decide. It's like there are many of us that do that. And okay, but for the rest of us that have ambitions, it's not enough. And it never has been enough.
I mean, it's hard, my brother, right? Like earlier, you were talking about me being extroverted, and I think I'm very ambiverted, actually. Like, I am somebody who recharges by being by herself.
Yeah.
And that means, by definition, I'm an introvert. And about after a day of that, I need to go and be with actual live people. Like, I live by myself with my black lab, Henry, who's great. But if I don't see another human being who I love in person, every other day or so, I get a little weird. And when I write books, it's like the maximized version of that, where when I'm locked down on a book, I don't want to see anybody for like 2 months. I don't want to be talked
Right.
to. I don't want to be disturbed. I just need to get the draft out of my head. And if you talk to me, you're going to interrupt it, and then I have to reset. So
Yeah.
that's tough. And to try and scrape things off the calendar, like life things or writer things, work things. Like, I'm a manuscript consultant and a teacher and a speaker and run a company. And so, like, I have to try and clear as much of that as possible. I've realized now it's not possible to clear it all, but as much as possible. So I
Right.
spend my time like in the yoga pants, for months on end. And when I'm done with that, then I go into this zone that I'm in now, which is the promo zone. And I'm kind of taking deep breaths before I jump off the diving board on January 13th. And that's my launch for Murder Your Darlings. And then I'm on tour for like literally 3.5 months. Like I have an event every day. There may be like 4 days where I have not an event. And again, like I love that, but it is like the max version of ambiversions of ambivertedness, I guess, if that's
Yeah.
even a word. So I've been, kind of locked down doing this, seeing friends hiking this month, December. I'm seeing nobody except like one on one in the woods. That's it. I'm like, don't talk to me. No
Yeah.
parties, no socializing because I'm going to go out there and do this huge thing. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to need a lot more quiet time to rest. Not everybody is built this way. A lot of writers
Yeah.
are writers because they're introverted. They hate doing
Right.
the public thing.
Yeah.
I will also say people are like, how did you even get this tour? I don't know. Like people want to go on tour, they can't get the tour put together. And it's partly because I had been a showman for, since, as you mentioned, my first book, when I was like doing everything I could, like busking in the subway, putting business cards up at the bulletin board at Starbucks, putting the business cards under people's windshield wipers, like saying, please read my book, like doing anything I could to get it out there. And
Yeah.
over that, like 20 years, I've built up relationships with bookstores and event hosts, and I've been so lucky. I love them so much. The readers, the readers, the readers, and the host, the host, the host. And so, God bless my publicist at HarperCollins. She's a new publicist to me, but she's a senior publicist now. She asked to work with me, and I was like, buckle up, because I put this tour together, and it's just bonk. Like I had just wrote a
Yeah.
Substack called like the Bonktastic book tour, and it's
Yeah.
totally crazy. So I
Yeah.
love this, but not everybody can do it. You have to find other ways in which that you feel comfortable with, that you love, to get
Yeah.
your book out there. Or you can just keep writing books and keep writing books and keep writing books. That's totally fine too. That is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so you cover a lot of ground there. We're talking about the zen of writing. We're talking about the yin yang of, I don't personally know any writers that are straight out extroverts because it begs the question, if you really need people and you only shine when you have a stage, how are you getting the work done? Which could lead us down a whole other rabbit hole of like the people that are very online and are very in love with talking about being a writer. I can't help but at times be like, I hope you're also getting some writing done. But be that as it may, what I'm hoping to kind of carve out is this very genuine tribute to you and why you are one of my heroes. It is this combination of you obviously have shown both terms of your track record, but the day in and day out, you get the work done. You respect the work. You respect the readers. You respect your own muse and your own time on this planet to do good work. But you recognize that there's an obligation. There are pressures. There is this kind of old school sensibility of it's not going to happen if I don't do it. And the reason, aside from just wanting to celebrate you in that, is for aspiring or less experienced writers watching this, like it isn't to say you have to do everything. I think that's part of the pressure we're talking about. But the reality being in 2025, if you're not willing to be involved in the process, you probably shouldn't be super disappointed if you're underwhelmed by the way the book is met. Just because there's so much great content out there, to stand a chance, you have to be a human being interacting with other human beings. I think the reason that you're so magical is, again, like I said, you do have your alone time and you do the work, but the fact that you're not faking it, again, is very rare and refreshing. Like you do enjoy both parts of this, and I think you just put it better than I could. Not everyone is like that, so I think the recipe is not that everyone has to be like you. We all can try, but it's finding that groove where you get the work done. It's important to you, but that's, again, I think in the 20th century, that might have been almost enough, and it just isn't now. Um, People can study you to figure out like, how do I begin to navigate the pre, post, day in and day out process of trying to be a writer that actually has fans that know you as a person.
Absolutely. I'm happy to talk to any writer about that as well. One of the things I do for my clients is social media marketing plans or book launch publicity plans, or people come to me and they say, can I sell this out of the trunk of my car? Yes, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. So I
Yeah.
try to figure out what each person's comfort level is and what kind of battery that person has, what that writer has, and design
Yeah.
some way to get the book out into the world that works for them. I actually also am a writer who loves social media, which is a rarity, but I have, again, like time is like a pie. Time is limited. And the older I get, the more I'm like, I have to be discerning about this. And I set a filter on my phone that kicks me off all of my social media platforms after 45 minutes. And I probably will increase that as I get closer to my tour. It'll probably be an hour to 2 hours because there's like a promotional hour and then there's a post promotional thank you hour after an event. Like that's part of my job, but
Yep.
I like social. I just realized that I couldn't do all of the social and do all of the stuff that I also needed to do to write a book. So I kind of
Yep.
siphoned some time away from social but I also realized that, okay, when I'm going on tour, I'm going to need to increase my social media time. And I'm not working on a book right now. Many writers I know do work on books when they're going on tour. They write every day. I'm not one of those people.
Right.
So I think it's mostly like writer know thyself. If you can think of some way that you feel comfortable interacting with other people, it will behoove you and behoove your book and plus behoove you as a human, unless you're, somebody who is genuinely super introverted who hates any sort of
Right.
interaction. Like, and then God bless you, put your books out there and see what happens and maybe they'll get picked up. But
Yep.
I think that there's no right or wrong way to do it. It mostly is about
Yep.
what works for you and then maximize that love for what it is you're doing. I am lucky. Like I love tour, I love social, I love content creation. I actually
Yep.
don't love the writing as much as everybody else does, unless it's going well, and then it's the best feeling in the world.
Writing is like love, right? When it's going well, it seems effortless, but it's usually a lot of work, like most things in life. Jenna, you talked about your clients, and I certainly want to make sure everyone knows about the work you and your team do at A Mighty Blaze. Let's talk a little bit about, because again, you really do as a human being, like you walk the walk, as I said, and I know from experience, but it's really important to you to help other writers, to be involved. Like you are of the writing world, and that's something I know that not a lot of people are either willing or capable of doing. Most writers only have enough bandwidth or kind of spiritual energy to focus on their own stuff and maybe a handful of family and friends. You really seem to get a lot of energy and satisfaction being part of the big picture and helping, always paying it forward. Talk a little bit about what you do, why you've been doing it, and how that feeds maybe a different or connected part of the artistic process.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, I mean, you are a community founder as well. And we talk a lot about this, how the world is a tough place a lot of the time. And hold up your light and you hope other people come to gather around that torch and in that way keep each other company and lift each other up. And that's something I have watched you do with 1455 for years and years and have admired and used as a template as I've grown my own little ventures. I think I have always, one of the ways that I feel safe and happy being in the world is as a teacher. And as a sort of a helper, as you said. And so I started out by being a teacher of creative writing and of journalism, which I am grateful to have been able to do. I'm still a teacher. I still do, paying work with clients for doing manuscript consultations or query letters or social media or like anything that helps writers is something that I really love to do. Like I book coach a couple of people, and I had a client ask me the other day, she's never written before. She's like, I don't have a degree. I have such imposter syndrome. How do you do this? She's like, I'm sitting in my car in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I'm like outside a Piggly Wiggly, and I'm thinking about all of your comments on my manuscript, and I'm just full of self doubt. And like, is this normal? It was like, are you there, God? It's me, Margaret, except for writing. And I was like, welcome to being a card carrying writer. If you are feeling self doubt, you're doing it right. If you are riddled with fear that you're making the wrong choices about your book, you're doing it right. Like being able to tell somebody that and reassure that writer gives my life meaning and purpose when my own writing is not in that crop rotation phase. Like if I'm not writing, I have to be helping somebody writing somehow because that means that it was a good day. Like that means that my time on earth that day was worthwhile because I was writing or helping somebody with their writing. So with Blaze, and you know this, the Mighty Blaze started in 2020 when COVID was canceling in-person book tours. And I was watching my friends who had spent a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in some cases writing their books, having their
Yep.
tours extinguished and their books were just circling the drain. And
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, hell no. And my first response to any unfairness is indignation and then action. And so I got in
Yeah.
touch with Caroline Levitt, who was hosting online blog tours, and said, hey, why don't I throw up a bunch of social media pages because I like social, and then all the books that come out every Tuesday, because books come out on Tuesday, nobody knows why. If
Yeah.
you put each book light together. Each little book is a light. If we put them all together, we can make a mighty blaze on Tuesdays. And then readers will know where to get their next great reads, which they'll need in COVID. And the writers have some place to introduce their new books. And then it grew into this huge thing that I, just totally despite my skill set or intentions, we
Yep.
were just really lucky. We were the only people who were doing anything like that in that first week of the pandemic. And we got great press because Caroline knows everybody. And we were like the only lifeboat rowing away from the Titanic. And now, 6 years later, we're going to go into our seventh year in March. We're still hosting and featuring writers who are putting out their books, and we have a debut spotlight. So we're lifting up the debut writers. Like one of them was Virginia Evans, who wrote The Correspondent. Like our debut host, Ellen Commissar, was on that before anybody else. She's like, this book is so good, so good. It is so good. And we
Yeah.
do Thoughtful Bro, we do a crime time show, we do Friday Frontliners, which I'll be interviewing you for like momentarily, even though it's Thursday. So for like long track authors and community founders. So the Blaze has just been this great joy of my life. And I sometimes think when I look back, like on my deathbed when I'm an old woman, will I be grateful for my books and proud of my books? Yes. And I also will be so grateful and for and proud of the Blaze, which is just this immense goodwill effort that I do with a team of 30 other people who are all donating their time because they want to contribute and be good literary citizens that way. And before I sound really angelic, I should point out that as we discussed, writing books is hard. And there are many times when the muse is willful and doesn't want to show up and is just like, fine, come get me. Being a good literary citizen is dependable. You can always be a good person. You can't always download what you need to from the muse. And so I think it's one of those ways that I feel connected to the writing world when my own writing might be squirrely or I'm just not in that phase of actual creation.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you for that. And guys, like TV timeout, is it becoming clear why I admire and am inspired by this remarkable person? Jenna, again, and kind of wasn't intentional, but inevitably we've covered like what is the writer's life like? What does it require? It's a lot of hard work, but you and I hope myself are saying in a way that's not pretentious, not to scare anyone. It's more of it's actually encouragement. Like it's hard work and it's hard work you're gonna love because what have you ever done in your life that was easy and you felt great about? That happens, but that's not how people attain mastery. Talking about the willingness and ability to get involved and help shape the trajectory. But now we're getting into literary citizenship. And what I will say with confidence and very loudly is that what you do and Caroline and the team, but what you do is very rare. There are very few writers I know, and I know a lot across many genres that really believe what you just said, that really feel like it's energizing, it makes me feel good. Lifting up books is a it's a human endeavor. Yes, it's absolutely a creative, kudos and you're paying it forward, but there's something so gratifying about being part of something bigger. And lest it sound, you know, super cliched, for me personally, I find it's absolutely an antidote to a lot of the things that your book addresses, the envy, the feeling of helplessness, the pressure, the relentless like self-doubt. Focusing some of that energy on helping someone else succeed, so simple, so packed with potential. And again, the Blaze, the reason I just adore the work Blaze does is it's working, right? Like it's one thing to try. It's like we give anyone props for trying to make an effort. When something it achieves extraordinary success and is genuinely lifted up other writers, you're building worlds, right? You're not just building communities. Like there's all kinds of things happening that would not have otherwise happened. You should be proud of that. You should feel like that's one of the big achievements of your life.
You should too. And it is, a lot of work. And so like Blaze was one of those things that I really felt like a kite. I started doing this with Caroline and it was like the wind was at my back. And there were times when I remember like crying at one point to a friend saying, I just want my old life back. I just want to go back to writing books and being on tour. It was in the middle of COVID. Because even though we had that momentum and we were really lifted up by the industry and by other writers and by our team, and we had this amazing, I had a PR, I still have, we have our PR maven on this team, I was like, we don't need a PR person. I don't have time to interview a PR person. She was so persistent saying, let me volunteer for you. Let me volunteer for you. Like that was the kind of energy that people would just come and be like, let me help you.
Yeah.
And let me help this endeavor. And it was still like 12 to 14-hour days where I would like wake up and be sitting in my, living room in my underwear because I didn't have time to put on pants. Thank God it was COVID. Nobody could see I wasn't wearing any pants, but I would be, like retweeting happy pub day or, like looking at the content or scheduling the interviews. And I mean, it was really fantastic and it runs itself a little bit more now, but I'm curious about your own experience as well about the amount of time it takes and how do you apportion that in your own life as a writer. And I don't want you to answer that because everybody I'm interviewing Sean on the Blaze today at 4 p.m. So I'm going to ask him about all of his endeavors and the empire that he has started and nurtured and built and grown into now a book imprint, which is amazing. But it is, again, a pie and you take away
Yeah.
some energy from other areas of your life and you just kind of I think keep
Yeah.
shifting that energy around and being a good literary citizen and being part of a community. I think because I don't have a spouse or kids, like I have the bandwidth for that and
Yeah.
I everybody has their life choices that they think, do I have regrets about this? Sure. Am I grateful for it? Sure, absolutely. Like my choice
Yeah.
was not to have kids. So then like Blaze is
Yeah.
my kid and my books are my kid. And I maybe have a
Sure.
little bit more energy to give to that than people who are actively creating good human beings. So this is partly my way of contributing and feeling worthy.
Well, that's beautiful and it's very kind of humble and modest, genuinely. But I won't let that pass because yes, what you're saying is I guess true. It's still a choice, and a lot of writers, a lot of human beings feel that if they, especially if they work hard and have some measure of success, they've earned every second of downtime to focus entirely on themselves. And I think we live in a society where that's reinforced in any number of ways. So to me, it really again is rare and refreshing that you choose to use time you could spend any number of ways doing things for other people. But the reason I harp on that so much is not only because it really inspires me, but I think it gets into a much deeper kind of systemic issue. And it's funny, right? Because you and I mean, we certainly met each other after the internet, but like it was definitely pre-social. The world was a lot different, but I think some of the things we're talking about have remained the same, both as writers and as citizens. But I think the example that you provide is away from keeping writers who, whether they realize it or not, like the pressures of doing publicity, of trying to get one's work out there can make people very ugly. Not just selfish, but can lead again things you use to great effect in the book, but maybe even darker than, the humor laden examples in your book. It's almost like the world is reinforcing bad behavior. And I guess I'm here to say it doesn't have to be that way. And if you need an example, look to this person. Um, how has that shaped your writing? I mean, we both have changed as people, although I think, again, one of the reasons that we're so connected is we're exactly the same as we were 25 years ago. But how has doing all these different things, teaching, working with Blaze, doing the things you do, how has that impacted your creative life?
I'm kind of like tipping my head and looking flinty about it because I'm thinking about the question. I think it's always been part of my creative life. It's just found its own channel. Again, I'm not somebody who writes every day. I write when I'm possessed by an idea. I have gone, 5 years between books because I've been ideating and trying to find the book that I really want to live with and promote for the next 3 years, write for 2 years and then promote for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not a book a year writer, although I have three more thrillers lined up in my head and I do hope to get them out more quickly. And thank you, than the historical fiction, which takes me a long time to research. So I'm excited about that possibility of speeding up my treadmill a little bit.
Yeah.
But when I am not actively writing or promoting, I often am really cranky. Like I don't like it. My life, I think, is a creative act in some ways. And I realized just now, looking back over this sort of vista, because I'm in a new place with writing a thriller and being in this era, um, that whenever I wasn't actively writing, I was doing something creative. So I was at one point. doing photography for a while when I was living in Kansas with my, in between my second and third books, I want to say. Yes, I just had that engine was on and it was spinning, and I was like, "Mm." So I had a couple of photography exhibits. It was not like I'm not a genius photographer. I was living with a genius photographer at the time, and I was like, this is fun. I am not a genius. You do this, and I'm going to go back to writing. But I also, at one point, was, I've always been teaching, I've always been speaking. I knew there was another endeavor in there that I wanted to highlight, but now I can't even remember what it was. But I've always been doing something that is a creative.
Storm chasing?
Storm chasing, which is actually, oh, the social media. When I first started doing social media, I was really into it and I was online all the time and I was creating a persona and I was creating content for that persona. And I was really trying to
Yeah.
engage with readers and give them something to look at every day that was funny, that was provocative, that was thought provoking, that was entertaining. So they would tune back into what one of my friends called the Jenna Blum TV channel. And I was like, that's really what it's like. I'm a producer. And then there's Blaze. So there was always something,
Yeah.
some big
Yeah.
creative project between books that was not actually a book. And I
Right.
feel like the ball bounces back and forth in that way. And the book adjacent projects give my brain maybe a chance to reset a little bit while I'm rolling ideas around. And then when one of the ideas clicks into that sort of roulette channel, then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna lock down now. See you guys later. So
Yeah.
I think it's always been like that.
I think again you just articulated maybe one area that we've I don't think I've ever publicly addressed with you, which is again another kinship I feel with you is living a creative life. It's a combination of the data that our weird minds are pushing out and where our energies go. But I think it's a conscious choice to channel that and not suppress it or have the energy and the ambition, the life ambition to channel the success energy and creativity into things, into actions, and not for the sake necessarily of profit or end result, but the work itself and being active, being engaged, being curious. I think that that's really, if there's a secret, and if I were to say, well, what makes Janet tick? That seems to be it, what you just talked about. It's very obvious. The other thing though that I'd be remiss if I didn't have you elaborate on, because I think this is crucial for all writers to be reminded. Another thing that I see a lot, and again, it goes back to an analog era, but the notion of trend chasing and put yourself in the best position to write the book that's going to succeed and resonate. The reality is, and I said this earlier, if you can tell a writer loves the book they're writing and not in an ego, self-obsessed way, like if the writer's enjoying it, you're more likely to enjoy it. Similarly, write a book that you care about. I really appreciate you saying that you take some time between projects because you need to be inspired. That's anything but pretentious. It's really more you, like I said earlier, it's my opinion, you trust the writing, you revere the reader. So you've got to be all in. But I just think that's a good reminder for anyone. Like, it's not necessarily to say don't write with a market in mind. Like, you have to respect the readership and what might be palatable, but you have to believe in what you're about to spend 6 months to 6 years doing. Otherwise, what is the point?
Mhm. I think there are so many different kinds of writers and different kinds of writing. I think a lot of people are happy just to write a good yarn and call it a day, and that's great. And I respect that. There are
Yeah.
just so many different ways to be a writer. I wish I were a more efficient writer, but I, have spent my entire life trying to make friends with my own spots, so to speak, my own leopard spots. And I again hope that I can accelerate a little bit my own timeline with the next couple of books. And, if not, then that's fine. But I really think, honestly, Sean, I didn't set out to do something creative between the books. It just happened. And I'm glad that it happened because otherwise I feel not great. Like I spoke
Yeah.
earlier about writers who write every day when they're on tour. And I spoke with a friend recently who had been on tour. She did this gonzo tour where she did, I don't know, hundreds of events, literally hundreds of events.
Wow.
And I said, all right, now that you're home, are you writing or were you writing on tour? And she said, I write all the time or I don't feel well. I don't feel good. And
Yeah.
that is not the kind of writer I am. I'm very happy to go out on tour and eat cheeseburgers and get dressed up and meet people and, be all important for a while, and then go back
Right.
home and wrestle with my muse. But if I'm not doing something creative, I don't feel good. And there was a
Yeah.
time post pandemic, like just to drop something real on you, when I was between books. I was struggling with the historical fiction. Blaze was running fine without me, and it didn't need me in the same way. And I
Yeah.
wasn't teaching at that time. I teach a novel workshop that's been running for over 20 years, but just my novelists were all out promoting their books and didn't need to start new books, so nobody could take a class at that point. And I was really adrift, and it was a terrible feeling. I was like, I'm worth nothing to nobody at this point. Like, really, like, I'm a little bit like, I have not said that to many people. And it was a bad time. It was a very gray time for me. I'm like, if I winked out, nobody would miss, the dog would miss me. But I mean, he also gets along with other dogs and people just fine. So it'd be fine. And when I started teaching again, it helped me feel better.
Yeah.
And then when I was kind of getting back into this book, it rejuvenated me and acted as a spark plug. But it was really awful not to have any sort of creative venture. I was completely lost at sea. And that is just how I am built. Like, I don't think it's a thing you can really aspire to, or you should do this or do that or whatever. It's just the way I'm put together. So if I'm not creating, even if I'm like not baking a bread and giving it to somebody that
Yeah.
day, my life doesn't feel like I wasted that day, so that's how I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the creative life and how to live it, right? That is the journey that all of us are on and trying to figure out how to be as healthy, happy, productive, honest to oneself as possible. Jenny, you're nothing if not honest, you're nothing if not industrious, and you're nothing if not generous. But you're also nothing if not brilliant. So let's bring it full circle. Murder Your Darlings, coming out January 13th. Where are people, we're going to put all kinds of links and stuff to make it easy, but talk a little bit about when you hit the road, where you're going and how people can find you.
So, yes. And I think that, again, like being part of a community and helping other people is a way to be worthy no matter what you're going through as a writer or as a creative. So I highly espouse that. And I am lucky enough to be going on this bonktastic tour, as I mentioned. And I start out here in Massachusetts. I am launching Murder Your Darlings at the Lenox Hotel on January 13th with reading with Robin Call Hominoff, who's going to interview me. She's been a fairy godmother for this book. She got it optioned by Roman Pfeffer Entertainment because she's their head of book marketing. And so there's a Hollywood link with this, which is great. I will be the story for another day. Tee. So I'm going to be in New England, Boston, Long Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, in Florida. In February, I go to the Midwest for 2 weeks. So I will be in Wichita, Indianapolis, Carmel Clay, Indiana. See if I can get everything right. We just decided to stuff Des Moines into the suitcase today, which is great. I can't wait to see my friends in Iowa, going to Cleveland, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and then I'm back here going to New Jersey, and then back to Florida, and then back to New England, and then I'm going out to California, and then I'm going to be in New York in May for Thriller Fest. So where am I not going is the question, really. Where am I not going? I'm going to go as many places as possible. So if anybody wants to know where I'm going, DC, where hopefully I'll be able to see Sean in person, which is going to make the universe like blow up. So you should definitely come to that. It's March 5th at Politics and Prose. My first experience there. I'm so, so, so excited. And if you want to know where I'm going to be and where you can find me in person, it's www.jennablum.com/events. And more events are added every day, like literally. So,
You're like the literary Bob Dylan. You're going to go on tour and just never come off. That's my fantasy. Where's Jenna? She's on the road. Well, when's she coming off the road? The road never ends.
road never ends. I know at the bottom of my events list, we put my web designer, whose name is Jenna Jacopo. She's a genius. And we took the rabbit from my book cover and put it at the bottom of my events list and then wrote the end. And we were both so punchy. We thought it was so funny. We're like, it's so cute. Oh my God, look at that. And then I was like, but it isn't actually the end because I'm adding events every single day and I hope to add them into the fall. I might be in Columbus this summer. It's just going to be, it is bonktastic. It's going to be great. So
Yeah.
please come out and see me. Keep me from sitting in the chair for, a little while longer. Like, help me out here. Help me earn my room service cheeseburger. Come and play.
Indeed. Well, listen, Jenna, I mean, again, anytime I can carve out to get FaceTime with you is a pleasure, but I'm certain if those of you watching right now are just entering the Jenna Blum experience, I'm both delighted and a little envious. Start at the beginning and work your way through, or actually start at the end because this is fresh off the presses. Murder Your Darlings, I mean, you're gonna love it, and it covers so much. Like, if you don't read a lot of literary fiction, this is gonna level you up. If you are an aficionado of mysteries and thrillers, it's gonna float your boat. And there's a lot going on, like we talked about, to satisfy you. Um, Jenna, all I can say is congratulations. You've done it again. We all are rooting for you, very confident about how this book's going to meet the world, but I am very excited to see what happens. So be well, stay safe, and we'll see you, if not sooner, in March at Politics and Prose. Folks, I will put more links into the wrap up so you can find the book, the author, and how to meet her in person on tour. Um, Jenna, I'll talk to you soon. Love you, appreciate you.
Love you so much, Sean. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. I never take any of this for granted. Just love all of you. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, be well. And I think this is the last podcast I'm recording in 2025. So, what better way to go out than with this person? So, we will see you soon. Everyone, take care and keep writing and keep reading. Thanks for tuning in to Some Things Considered. Find out more, including how to be a guest, at seanmurphy.net. Reminder, we are obsessed with story and celebrating creativity. Also, we're here to advocate for the arts by any means necessary. Drop us a line, get involved, and support our creatives who are the lifeblood of our culture. I'm Sean Murphy. See you on the next episode of Some Things Considered.